So I was sitting around the other day, pondering as one does when you're in this community and you have a splash, just a sprinkling of the tism. What are some of the more favored games in the community? And my search brought me to the 2D games where, like, Sonic 1, 2, 3, and or Knuckles are all fairly appreciated and well reviewed. Same thing with things like the advanced games or the Rush games, Mania, like almost all of the 2D games have a generally positive outlook, but there is one that stands out above all the others that has polarizing views where you either think it's the worst of the 2D games or it's your favorite 2D game for hundreds of reasons, and I just wanted to look at some of those reasons, see why both sides of the argument when it comes to Sonic CD are correct, and kind of, I wouldn't say make a middle ground, but like kind of just look at both sides of the argument, the validity at all the points being made. I don't know how long this is gonna be. Like, I'm kind of just gonna let my thoughts do what they will, but in advance, go ahead, like, sub, so you don't miss any of my other autism-fueled video essays. Join the Discord. It's a bunch of us in there. We like to talk. We like to meet new people, hang out, and everything. But yeah, let's get to it. Ninja Storm, Ranger form. LOKK CD, man. Sega's 1993 game for their ill-fated Sega CD console. Yeah, the console didn't last long, but they had to make sure that, we had at least one Sonic game on it, and the Sonic game we got was absolutely fantastic. In Sonic CD, the colors pop, stage aesthetic was great. We got the Sonic Boom intro animated by Toei Animation. A lot of purists were born from this game, and as you've seen in some of my Everything Wrong With videos, that's kind of like not the fault of the game, but more so a thing of circumstance. But I like this game. I honestly wasn't in the camp of like this being a top tier game because, for one, I'm not gonna lie to you, I was late on this one. Me and my family did not own a Sega CD. I had the Genesis, and my next Sega console was the Dreamcast, or, well, the Saturn that I got from one of my friends. But the next one I owned was the Dreamcast. But my first real foray with this game was on the Mega Collection, and at the time I thought it was fun. It's a passable Sonic game. It was very different. Things like the stage design, the soundtrack, like just a lot of things that I personally at the time wasn't used to, but I ended up loving anyway just because of how different it was. And this is the first real foray into Sega trying to veer off from the formula that they had started with 1 and 2 and the Game Gear games, and I appreciated it. And I came back to this game in Origins Plus, and it actually changed my view on the game itself, because one of my friends informed me that you don't even have to use the time travel mechanic. You can just get 50 rings and jump. And for the past 20 years, I had just been using the time travel mechanics, finding the machines, and making good futures. Had no idea about it, but we live and learn. Shout out Ed. I'm naming him the official channel artist because he's the one that made my avatars. Shout out Ed. The overall consensus of this game is incredibly mixed, and there are 3 major points that I kind of wanted to talk about. The first being the aesthetic. Sonic CD's aesthetic is absolutely one of one. Like, the colors have never been brighter, there have never been more variations to the level designs in every single stage. I mean, there are 8 stages in this game, but there's a present, a past, a good future, and a bad future version of each stage. So there's really 32 stages if you want to see every single one. And all of them have varying degrees of color palette swapping, different stages of degradation and growth. Like if you go to the past of most stages, it'll show what it looks like before Eggman shows up, or before, you know, it became to be what the stage is in the present. And a lot of them, most of the ones that take place outdoors kind of look prehistoric, but I don't think they ever confirmed how far back in the past you actually go. But even with that, the time it takes to come up with 4 different levels and have them all stay in one aesthetic, one core aesthetic, whether that be the natural look of Palm Tree Panic, or the pinball look of Collision Chaos, or even the mine or cavernous aesthetic of Quartz Quadrant. All of those stages utilize the CD's buffed color palette to its absolute max. There was not a 2D game that was more colorful, more vibrant, or more varied in its usage of palettes than CD. Now, the cons to this are usually along the lines of, oh, well, every stage is just replaying the same stage, 4 times, which in essence, in name, it's true in name only, because like I said, each stage has a completely different aesthetic depending on what part of the future or what part of the timeline you go to. And Palm Tree Panic is probably the first real instance you get of that, because it's really easy to travel in that stage with it being the first stage. And if you look at the past, things kind of look like almost prehistoric, like stuff is growing, it's overgrown, there's no real maintenance to the flora and fauna of the stage. And then you go to the present and everything, it looks like traditional Sonic game, current times, or whatever the current time was in 1993. And then you have 2 options for the future. If you go to the bad future, it's basically if Sonic never showed up, or if you don't get the time stone, or if you don't destroy the robot machines in the past. And it's just like in a state of disarray and absolute chaos. Whereas if you go to the good future, then everything in the future is kind of thriving, like the water's clear, the plants are popping. It doesn't look prehistoric, but it just looks like everything's very healthy. And like the best part of the aesthetic is Sonic has always been the underlying message of the Sonic games is eco-conservation, if you want to look into it that deep. And one thing that I really liked about it is, whether it's the good future or the bad future, technology is always involved in the state of the environment. Like there are water purify, using Palm Tree Panic again as an example. If you go into the good future, there are water purifiers, irrigators on the trees. The trees have, bioluminescent lights on them. And that's a really nice touch to me. Like the aesthetic is just, it's unmatched. And if you go to the bad future, like you're seeing now, there are, oil pipelines, the water's black, the trees are either dead or like they've been covered in metal. There's all metallic. Like that's a really dope design choice. Like no matter which side of the fence you have to admit that is objectively cool as shit. So with all that being said, for me personally, the aesthetic is an 11 out of 10 on Sonic CD for all stages, man. It's really good. The next point of contention is the soundtrack, and I know there are hella opinions to be had about this one, so let's get into that shit. The good old soundtrack debate. Now, this one usually tends to be one of the few things that people let other people in the community have. Like, this is the one thing that both sides can agree and both sides take a dub in, because I appreciate, Japan and all of its contributions to the world without making it my entire personality. I am by no means a weeb or a Nihongo-phile. None of that bullshit, right? So I usually don't even engage in, the thing versus thing Japan aspect of a lot of things. If something's good, it's good. If it's not, it's not. Like, place of origin has no bearing. Sonic CD's soundtrack is one of those very rare exceptions where I am all in favor of thing Japan. Like, the US soundtrack to me, while good, it is a good soundtrack. It is not a bad OST by any means. The US soundtrack just does not hold a fucking candle to the Japanese soundtrack. Like, there's not a single song on the American OST that I would put over any song on the Japanese OST for these stages. Here, like, this is going to be the quickest point ever because I just want to play a few examples of each stage, and y'all can hash it out in the comments. I will argue back and forth with y'all. The Japanese Sonic CD soundtrack is by and away light years ahead of the US soundtrack, and I will die on that hill. But fuck all that. Like, we'll save that for the comments. Here are some examples. I'm gonna play a couple, like some seconds from each version of each song for y'all so y'all can hear the difference. My opinion, Japan won that one. We got absolutely gun smoked on the fucking OST for Sonic CD. But here's some examples and we'll move on to the next point. Yeah, I know you started dancing as soon as you heard Stardust Speedway. I did too. Happens every time. But I don't think there's anything else that needs to be said about how much better the Japanese version is than our OST. So I'm just gonna move on to the next point, being stage design. Now, this is probably the most hotly contested topic on today's bulletin, but does Sonic CD have poor stage design? And before I give my opinion, I just want to look at both sides of the argument. There is an argument to be made that the stage design in CD is sort of lacking, because it seems like anytime you pick up any modicum of speed, there's a huge platforming section that you have to go through that's not really conducive to maintaining that speed. The level design also really doesn't lend itself well to maintaining the necessary speed to time travel either, because They're pipe or a pitfall or spikes or enemies set up to directly stop you from traveling through time, and that's just part of the charm. Now, the other side of the argument, which is kind of the side that I fall on, is that Sonic CD's stage design is conducive to the type of game it is, because yes, it is, a lot slower than 1, 2, or 3K, but this game was more so meant to be an exploration game featuring Sonic. There are some fast sections in the game where, you can just run through it like it's a traditional game, like 1, 2, 3K, Mania, any of the 2D games. And in that sense, it's fun. And that's honestly what really changed my opinion, because up until Origins, I was in the camp of like, God, Sonic CD's levels suck, but everything else is so great. And now, after playing through the game with the time stone method, get 50 rings and jump at the end of a level, you can kind of bypass all the necessary platforming and searching out future and past signposts, and then going to the past and searching out the robot maker machines, and just, get to the end of the level with 50 rings. And that honestly bumped it up a whole letter grade, in my opinion, because it's very conducive to that traditional style of Sonic, just going fast, high level platforming, and it made the game really feel like a new game to me after I'd played it in Origins with the time stone method. Now, that's not to say that the design is without its flaws, because at its heart, it was intended for you to explore these levels, so they are pretty gargantuan, and that in itself doesn't really make for what most people would have considered at the time a Sonic game before they started branching out, because it was really just about the speed and, being different and getting to the end as fast as possible. And I want to look at some of the stage design or the stage maps for Sonic CD and compare them to some of the others. And we're going to do that right now. Yeah, so we're back to live footage here. Shout out Sonic Retro. I don't want to call it ancient, but this has been around as long as I've been conscious of the Sonic franchise. So shout out Sonic Retro for having, stage maps of every stage, every game. This is the level of dedication I strive for. But I just wanted to take a look at some of the stage maps from CD and kind of show the differences, and I'm just going to go through just a couple of my favorite stages. So we could really start with Tidal Tempest 1. If you look, I'm going to zoom in. If you look at the stage map here, there's a lot of verticality. So there's a lot of, like, they don't really mark all the places where the signposts are, but there are a few signposts that they do show. I don't think they mark all of them, but so here's where we're exploring. We get to the past signpost down here, and you're supposed to find somewhere in all this madness to maintain enough speed to make the jump to the past. And everything is kind of like, it's a balance. It's a game of attrition between like getting the right signpost that you want and maintaining it, because let's just say you go to this future signpost right here up top. If you go to this future signpost, this spring will push you down here. It will give you enough speed to where you can run across these and maintain your speed. But right here is I almost said Buzz Bomber, is one of the enemies, I don't remember what that was called, is one of the enemies that will swoop down and hit you just as you get to the allotted time before you time jump. And I can't call it bad because it's conducive to the style of game that this is. It's kind of like, CD is kind of like a precursor to Frontiers in a way, in that, there's a bunch of ways to explore, a bunch of different ways to do things, and the stages, or at least the open world in Frontiers, is designed around that to let you have kind of like that freedom of movement. to figure out what you want to do and what paths. There's no time mechanic, but either way it goes, like your exploration is rewarded in these maps. Same with this one, like there's always going to be the traditional high path, middle path, and low path, just like in every other Sonic game. The premise is still there, but there's a lot more, I don't want to say clutter, but there's a lot more obstructions to the stages themselves to get in your way. Like this is the past of Quartz Quadrant. Again, peep the colors. There's no background, but like peep the colors. And there's a future sign right here. So if you want to go back to the present, you can. It's really easy to do it in Quartz Quadrant because like you can hit this future sign, jump over this enemy, and then kind of ride it out. And about here is normally where you know make the time leap. But there are things like this wall, this ring block that stop you if you don't know what's coming up, or if your reflexes aren't fast enough to maintain your time travel. And that little section is scattered throughout every stage and every design of every stage. So the challenge isn't necessarily maintaining the speed. It's maintaining your ability. I can't fucking talk. Maintaining your ability to jump through time. Now, I said it before in the video, like all of these stages have the same core design aesthetic, like with there being top, middle, low, and then the design is based off of whatever the stage aesthetic is. God, I love this stage so much. Like Quartz Quadrant is one of my favorite stages in Sonic. And, you know, if you take the high path up here, let's just say you hit the spring, jump up here, and then maintain your speed throughout all of this section, you get rewarded with a past sign. Now, again, the stage geography is designed both against and for you, because once you get here, you could really super peel out, and that'll boost you all the way to right here, and you can hit a spring. However, that they put the location of the destroyed fucking machine. However, you can also fall, like hit the bottom part and fall straight down and lose it, which, you know, sucks. But they also take the liberty of giving you another pass one, so you can go to another section of the stage, try it again. You can platform here, spring, get up there, and then, you know, super peel out again, and that one will usually carry you. So it's not like they were just throwing items and hoping that people would, like, you know, fuck up. I know it seems that way because it can be both a pro and a con, the stage design can. And it just makes sense. Stardust Speedway is probably the biggest offender because there are so many pathways that intersect with each other and you can get lost. Just look at this shit. Like, this is asset salad. And I understand why people would say that, like, you know, this is a bad stage design. But even then, everything is coherent. Like, we start here, you hit the spring, go down this path, float on over, you hit a future sign, or you can jump over it, whatever you want to do. If you just want to platform, that's cool. But you jump over it, hit the loop-de-loop, everything's still on the same plane, go up here, you can shoot yourself over it, swing through another loop-de-loop, and go down, hit a checkpoint, hit the spring, go up here, and come back down, and this will shoot you into these pipes. And these pipes, I'm gonna zoom out, and like, these pipes are kind of where things get a little bit confusing, like this area here, because one of the things that they were doing is having intersecting paths, like the foreground and background, depending on which spring you hit, that's where you go, but times 1,000. And I will admit, this is not conducive to like just pure speed. You kind of have to have some finesse with it. But again, it's conducive to the style of game they were trying to make with CD. And now we're going to go to one of my favorites, Sonic 2, where we're gonna look at some of the zones there. Now, again, I'm gonna be biased and just pick my favorite stages. I think everybody likes Chemical Plant, right? We'll go Act 2, because that's the more common one. A lot less stuff going on already that we can see visually, and the pathing is a lot more clean because the focus isn't, exploration, and there's nothing really hidden that you have to find in these games. So there's verticality, but like not to the degree of like a vertical stack every like 50, 60 pixels. You know what I'm saying? So like there's your high path here. We're gonna do it again just like we did. There's your high path here. This is where you start the act. You take this, you can jump from this one to the other one, and then ride this long ramp up. Run the long ramp up. Boost yourself over here. Pop these, get you some rings, get a checkpoint. And there's a shortcut somewhere. I want to say it's, forgive me because it's been a minute since I've looked at any of the stage maps, but it's over here. So you can, if your timing is right, after this second loop-de-loop, jump here, use the momentum to shoot yourself up and skip the entire water section. There isn't too many, you could skip hell. There aren't too many places like that in Sonic CD. And again, that's just both a testament to the tightness of the stage construction and also the tedium of the stage construction. And it just like, there are two games with two different objectives, right? We're gonna go to Casino Night because I like Casino Night. Casino Night's a pretty simple stage too. But even then, look at like there's way less obstruction going on in the Sonic 2 stages than there are in Sonic CD. Like everything is pretty cut and dry in Sonic 2. Well, hell, even really 1, 2, or 3, because there's high path up here, mid path right here. There's not really a low path in Casino Night Zone. So it's just, the default and then the high path. And even then going forward, we can look at something like Hilltop Zone, which has like a crazy mid section. This is about this middle section here with the lava, with the rising lava, and then going towards the other end, like close to the end of the act. This section here with the zip lines. This is the closest that you will get to Sonic CD caliber level design in any of the 3 classic games. Even in Mania. What's another really big stage? Like Metropolis Zone. Holy shit. Metropolis Zone, again, has a lot of things, but that's more so just, a skill check. Metropolis Zone isn't really designed to the same effect of something like Wacky Workbench, where it's just like, hey, this stage loops. And with CD, the looping is another knock against the stage design, because with Metropolis Zone, the way it loops, it's, at least for me, I find it a lot easier to find my way back to the correct path on something like Metropolis than I do with Wacky Workbench, because there are just a lot more landmarks with Metropolis Zone than there are with Wacky Workbench, and I will go back to that just to show you. Sorry, I was dumb. I meant Metallic Madness. Wacky Workbench is the thing with the big, the floor is basically one big ass bounce pad, but Wacky Workbench, this shit is pure fucking chaos. The stage loop normally happens, where the fuck is it? I want to say that's the goal. It's normally like around this area, where like if you're on the top path and you don't clear these and you slide down and you just keep going, and it's just it's so tedious because every section looks very similar. Like there are 4 of these yellow pumps or cylinders or whatever they are in the same area, right? And then you have 2 nearly identical sections of rotating platforms. There's one there. There's another one there. They're more spaced out here, but you also have these disappearing blocks that show up. Sonic CD was on some Mega Man shit. And there's another one at the end that does the same thing. It's like you got both of them. I want to say it's the Zone 2 Past and Good Future Act 3 that are the biggest offenders, because this is the entirety of the stage, right? It looks easy, but everything here, basically if you make a mistake, like we start, oh hold on, fucked up. We should start somewhere back here, right? I'm pretty sure you start right here. But you start right here, and any error you make in platforming will either kill you or land you back in this section with the double buzz saws. So if you fall here, you have to do this entire platforming section all the way over again, come back over to the very end, and then bounce yourself back all the way up top. You miss these, it's a death trap. If you finally make it, if you were blessed by the grace of Dende himself and you make it back over here, you have to avoid these, get the rings that are over here, and then platform yourself back. It's so tedious. It's such a tedious stage for it to be the Good Future after you already got both time stones, or like, you know, after you have all 7 time stones and you make it to this point. It's very tedious. Like I said, there's a lot of verticality to the CD stages that just isn't present in any of the other ones. And just for posterity, let's look at a Sonic 3 stage. Looking at Sonic 3, one of my favorite stages, Hydro City. Hydro City Zone. We start back here. Damn it. We start back here. You know, you run your way up, do your little water platforming. Yeah, that's the one that shoots you up. I always think that that's like the end of Act 1. But you start over here, do your little water platforming, get back up. And basically, as long as you don't do anything egregious, it's not hard to stay on the upper path in Hydro City Act 2. Once you get through the water section, there's a floating platform, spring, push you up here, the shit grabs your head, lets you run, you gain huge momentum. It happens again, up the spiral, over to the right, kill all of them or jump over them. Huge slope. Damn it, huge slope that leads right here into the spring that's gonna take you back underwater. But you have enough momentum to ride this ramp all the way back up top. And this is the top path. So like, shout out to you if you were one of the cool kids that stayed on the high path. There's verticality. Again, there's verticality, but all of it leads to one place. You know, there aren't too many dead ends or pitfalls that it's more conducive to a faster style of play than CD is. And that's the biggest thing. Like I was in the camp of CD has bad levels but great everything else, and now it's like you know, when you're not playing the CD levels in an exploratory way, basically you have to play the game against how they wanted you to play it to get the best experience out of it, in my opinion. Because I don't mind, you know, exploring stages, and it's only so much exploration you can do in a 2D plane. But at this point in time, people were just like, yeah, I want to go fast. What the fuck is this shit? And then that's why you got Sonic 3 and, well, that's not why you got Sonic 3 and Knuckles, but that's why the stage design flipped so hard back into, you know, a mixture of just speed and platforming as opposed to exploration. They got it right in Frontiers though. Fuck y'all. Shit is great. Shit is goated. But yeah, overall, there are good points for everything I discussed. Like, that's why I feel like it's one of the more hotly debated games. And, you know, it's whether or not you appreciate what the game was trying to do that really determines your enjoyment of it, because the stages can be tedious. I'm not gonna lie to y'all. The stages can be absolutely tedious to get through. And everybody has their preference of soundtrack, and that's always fun when you have two really good things. And I don't think there should ever really be a competition of, you know, better or worse. It's all always gonna boil down to personal opinion or personal preference anyway. But there are some people that are taking this like it's entirely too seriously, like most things that this fandom does. But as for me and my house, Sonic CD gets the same respect as the other classic games. It absolutely does. I love the aesthetic. I love the colors. I like the stages with the way that I've decided to play the game. The music is honestly unbeatable. Like, I don't understand really why CD wasn't the standard for every classic game going forward. Because in Sonic 4 they were like, yeah, we're gonna make an old school style soundtrack and use the Genesis drum kit. And it wasn't until Mania that we got a new game that kind of, you know, was in the same vein or caliber as the CD soundtrack. And those were just remixes with a couple of original compositions. And Superstars looks to be taking us back down that road to where we'll get, you know, more updated sounds, but with that same Sonic feel. And I'm really looking forward to that. If you made it to the 37-minute mark in this video, I love you dearly. I appreciate you. We are 10 subs away from my goal for the year of 500. And I appreciate each and every single one of y'all that's hung out with me, like that watches my videos, listens to my ramblings. Join the Discord. You know, we're gonna, like, once Superstars drops, we're gonna start doing the races. We always have, you know, people in there talking, joking around, sharing art, sharing music. Man, it's a really fun place to be. And you're always welcome. We do not discriminate. You are always welcome in the Rough Transition Discord. But all of those links will be down there. I will see y'all after update 3. Peace.